In today's episode, we race through the story of a wooden coaster that redefined rivalry and why its impact still echoes through the industry. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and as always, I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hey, I'm Haley Grace.
And thank you for tuning in to episode 60 of the podcast.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's not like a huge milestone, but
it's a
60 is pretty exciting. So
it's big, not huge.
Sure.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that until I, start putting all the, info together for the script. I was like, oh, episode 60, cool. So,
shame.
I don't know. So, I feel like when, every 10, 20, 30, 40 was like a big deal. But now that we're past 50, I'm like, I guess 75 is the next big milestone. Yeah. And even then, it's kind of like, I don't know, 100.
I don't know. Disneyland's celebrating their 75th, and they're going all out.
That's true. Is it? I don't even think it's 70. I think it's 70th. Is it 70th
no,
or is it
75th?
What year did Disneyland open? 51? 50? No, I think it's 70th. I don't think it opened in 50. I think it opened in 55. Let's find out, because we got nothing better to do, right?
Jeez, like our listeners want to help us figure this out.
It is 70th. Yeah, they're celebrating 70.
They're making a huge deal about it.
Yeah, they're making a big old deal out of it. So.
Yeah, huge.
And they'll do it again in 5 years.
Even bigger in 5 years.
It's whatever the marketing department can do to squeeze more money out of the people
Disney.
coming to the park. So it's funny. Well, if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. You probably guessed it, but here at Airtime Traveler, we do roller coaster history. But rather than talking about the history of the roller coaster in general, we like to take one roller coaster and do a deep dive into the history of that individual coaster. I've been a coaster enthusiast for a long time, and my wife Haley is a member of the GP, or the general public.
GP.
So I'm here to do the research and to tell the stories, and she's here to make me more interesting.
I still think I need a shirt that says General Public Princess.
General Public Princess.
I love it. I love it. I think it'd be awesome. It's like Passenger Princess.
It's like the coaster enthusiast passenger princess.
Yes! Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yep.
Yes.
That sounds about right. Well, I think we'll just dive right into our topic for today's episode. I can't think of any news that we haven't already talked about. So, Epic Universe opens the day that this episode comes out. I guess that's the biggest news, but let's be honest, it's really been open for a couple months already.
That's true.
So
there's so many people have gone already.
Oh my gosh. I know some people in my socials have been 4 times already. That's
insane.
Because it's been the employee previews and then the pass holder previews.
Colin and Charlie are going.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm like,
obviously the day that this comes out when it opens is going to be the craziest day so far. But yeah, it's still been pretty busy. I mean, I saw, it was sometime earlier this week that the line for the Harry Potter ride there was 6 hours or something crazy like that. Park's not even officially open yet.
That's
I'm like,
insane.
What's the line going to be like when the park actually opens?
I don't know. Yeah, no thanks. I do not want to wait 6 hours for a ride.
Yeah,
I don't care how cool a ride is.
It's pretty wild, so.
That's like there's so much you could do with 6 hours. Why wait in a line for a ride?
If I was local to Florida or Orlando, I probably would make it out to Epic Universe sometime soon, if not already. But for us to go all the way down there, I was like, I'm not going opening year because it's just gonna be
always too nuts,
total mayhem.
Yeah, I'm curious if Colin and Charlie will be able to even ride everything. I doubt it.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on if you catch it on a good day and if the rides don't have any downtime, because that has an impact too.
I mean, we've gone to
if you pay
Hershey
for
twice
if
now.
you pay for fast passes, things like that. So
yeah, haven't we tried Hershey twice now in Wildcat?
no, it's only been
once, I guess,
that we missed Wildcat. But the first time we went to Hershey, we missed Sky Rush.
Yeah.
Because that had gone down like 2 weeks before we went. So you never know. But
yeah.
Anyway, so. Well, speaking of Hersheypark, there's our little segue into.
I am a mind reader.
We're doing Hersheypark today. One of our favorite parks.
I'm actually really impressed.
Yeah. I would say
I did not know that.
I did mention it and when we did our last recording, so maybe subconsciously you knew, but you probably forgot, honestly.
I pulled it out of my subconscious files.
But yeah, we're doing Hersheypark today. One of our favorite parks. We've been there a decent amount.
What, 4 times now? Has it been 4 times?
I think it's either I think it's 3 times, but 2 of those 3 trips were multiple days. So we've spent 5 or 6 days in total at the park, I think is how it works out, something like that. So we've spent a good amount of time at Hersheypark. We're pretty familiar with it at this point. So
yep.
And today we're talking about not one of their headline attractions per se. We're talking about Lightning Racer at Hersheypark. Now there's a story that we have that goes with Lightning Racer that we've been teasing for years now. We've been teasing this story about Lightning Racer, and we've always said we'll tell the story one day when we do a Lightning Racer episode. Someday when we do a Lightning Racer episode, we'll tell it. Today is that day. Finally we'll tell you our story. I think we've probably mentioned it in passing, or if you've maybe listened to our trip reports, we maybe talked about it a little bit, but we'll tell the full story today for our full Lightning Racer story. So,
are we telling it now?
No, we'll do it at the end of the episode, I think.
What?
Well, that's how you keep engagement. Everyone, all the people listening now, they're fine, I guess I'll wait and stick around to the end of the episode. So.
Save the best for last.
Exactly.
Unless they fast forward the episode.
No, actually the history part is the more important part of the episode. Our story is the least important part of this episode. So you should be tuning in to listen to the whole episode anyway.
Okay.
Lightning Racer at Hersheypark opened in 2000 at a cost of $12.5 million, 3,393 feet long, 92 feet tall, and a top speed of 51 miles per hour. Average wait time for 2024 was 21 minutes, which actually is a lot higher than I would have guessed. But we also haven't been to Hersheypark on the weekend. We always make sure we go during the middle of the week because it's an absolute madhouse on the weekends.
Nutcase, yeah.
Very busy park.
Yes.
So we always try to go during the middle of the week, even though we always are pretty much always there during the summer. We still try to make it, on a weekday.
Yeah.
And I've never seen Lightning Racer longer than a 10-minute wait.
Yeah, it's been pretty chill.
All the times that we've gone. So, which, because it's a dual, it's technically 2 roller coasters. We'll talk about that later in the episode, but it's actually 2 separate roller coasters right next to each other. But so you have twice the capacity of other attractions, of similar roller coasters.
Right, basically cuts your wait time in half.
Exactly, and so I've never seen a long wait, and so 21 minutes was actually more than I would have anticipated. In the CoasterBot rankings, it ranks at number 183 in the country. It's also a little lower than I would have anticipated, but it is kind of an aging wooden coaster at this point.
Yeah.
Ranks below coasters such as Timber Terror at Silverwood, Swamp Fox at Family Kingdom, and Cyclops at Mount Olympus. It ranks above coasters such as Comet at Six Flags Great Escape, Great White at Maury's Piers, and The Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. Now, because Hersheypark has such a stacked lineup, Lightning Racer comes in at number 7 in their lineup, just because they've got so much there. Wildcat's Revenge comes in at 1, followed closely by Sky Rush at 2, Storm Runner at 3, Candemonium at 4, and then you have Fahrenheit and Great Bear at 5 and 6 before Lightning Racer comes in at 7. And then that is followed by Comet at 8, Super Duper Looper at 9, and Laugh Track at 10. And then some of the smaller coasters.
I'm still shocked at Laugh Track being so low. I liked Laugh Track.
It was pretty good. It's just it's a family coaster for sure. And so coaster enthusiasts are just like, yeah, it's good, but it's not great. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I liked it. I thought it was smooth.
It was very good. I debated doing a Laugh Track episode because Laugh Track's, it's the 10th anniversary of Laugh Track this year. But I had to choose between Laugh Track and doing Lightning Racer. And I thought we had teased our story for Lightning Racer too long. So
True that.
Plus, we don't talk about wooden coasters as much, so any opportunity I have to talk about Lightning Racer.
I like talking about the wooden coasters.
Yeah. We'll do Laugh Track sometime.
Okay.
So we don't have a Laugh Track story, unfortunately.
No, definitely.
I mean, we kind of do actually. It's not as exciting. It's just that we made friends with strangers in line at Laugh Track because we started playing that. It's that game that everybody plays the Heads Up game that everybody plays in amusement park lines now. Yeah, we started playing it with a bunch of strangers in line for Laugh Track.
It was fun.
Yeah, good times.
It was. It kept us busy, so kept us wait time down for us. Yeah. So,
review of the name for Lightning Racer. I don't think it's a bad name. I think Lightning it's
overused.
It's used quite a bit. Yeah. Now, to be fair, a lot of the other Lightning names came after Lightning Racer, like Lightning Run and Lightning Rod, and I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of right now, but Lightning Racer did come before those, so I do have to give credit where credit's due and say that the other ones technically would be the copycats if we're being fair here. So, but I do think it's a solid name. Like, you know, it's and throwing Racer in there clearly, you know, sets the mood and tone for a racing coaster for sure. So, and I'm glad that they didn't do just like the typical thing that racing coasters have done for so long and just calling it the Racer. You know, that was a thing that was done so much throughout the 20s up through the 70s and 80s before they finally were like, you know what, I think we can get a little more creative with this. So,
yeah, this is getting old.
Yeah, the logo's decent. I will say that it could use a refresh. There's also 2 separate logos. There's this logo that shows up like on the website and like marketing materials and different things like that. But then when you actually go on the ride, there's a different logo above on the sign for the ride and the marquee and all that. So,
I always think that's funny when that happens.
Yeah. They are similar. Like they still use like the lightning bolt theme and like the same colors. So it's at least a variation of the logo rather than like Wildfire at Silver City that has like 4 different logos and they're all different. Like it's at least different than that. But
crazy.
But so
you don't know what the logo is because there's too many of them.
I really don't. Like when I because the logo that they use for, slightly off topic, but the logo that they use for like the Nano coaster that they sell at the park is like, it's like green and black, and I'm like, that's none of the colors that are on the attraction. Like the ride is like a steampunk. Yeah. Like with the muted reds and browns and grays. And I'm like, where is this bright green coming from? It doesn't make any sense.
All the colors of the rainbow.
Yeah. Well, and then like the sign that is gone now, but there used to be a big sign that was over one of the walkways. I actually really liked that one. It was like a wood sign and then had like steel letters with like rivets in it. Like I thought that looked really nice, but that's not the one that they use in all their marketing materials. And that sign's gone now anyway. So now I have no idea what the logo is. So
no one knows.
I wouldn't be surprised
it's a great mystery.
I actually would not be surprised if once they get that whole area finished with after the fire that was over not back towards the right, but there was like that fire on the front end of that section there. Plus, I know that they're clearing trees and doing some work on American Plunge Pack out that way too. So there's kind of a whole bunch of going on in that section of the park. And I feel like there might be a new ride sign for Wildfire when all is said and done. So
I'd love a new pathway to get to there. That'd be nice. It's kind of hidden.
Well, it's so far out there, but I also don't know how you fix that. It just kind of is what it is. So it would be nice if they could maybe, if they are building another coaster out that way, if they could tie Powder Keg and Wildfire together through the back end. Because right now you have to like walk down the hill across and then back up the hill towards Wildfire.
I agree.
If they could build that into like a big loop, that'd would be really nice. So.
That would be really nice, yeah.
So, anyway, back to Hersheypark.
Sorry, we're like very off topic tonight.
Review the paint scheme and the trains. It's a wooden coaster, so nothing to talk about as far as paint scheme.
Wooden coasters that have a paint scheme, I feel like. So.
There's not many. Most parks don't really.
I've seen a few wooden coasters that are white.
There's some that are white, and then there's a few that are blue, like Blue Streak at Cedar Point, and then some of the Woodstock Express coasters they paint. But generally speaking, I don't think. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any GCI coasters that are painted because they're just so much bigger than like the older wooden coasters. Right. It's just a lot of work to paint, way more work to paint a wooden coaster than to paint a steel coaster. So, and I'm sure the paint wears off way faster on wood than it does on steel, I would imagine.
Chips and whatever.
Right. So I just don't think parks see the value in it unless the coaster's small enough to warrant it, like Woodstock Express or Blue Streak or something like that. So, but the trains aren't much to talk about either. No. I mean, they just
the trains.
Yep, there's a red one for the Lightning coaster and the green one for the Thunder. That I guess I didn't mention that. That is the two sides of the coaster because it is two separate coasters where some racing coasters are what's called a Mobius loop, which means well, Mobius loop means it's one track. You essentially when you ride it, you only technically ride half of the coaster. And like, so if you start on the right, when you leave the station, you'll end up on the left when you come into the station. That's how Racer at Kennywood works, is that way. But this is two separate coasters. They don't connect at all. They just are side by side. And so one is referred to as the Lightning and one is referred to as Thunder. And so they are. And if you ask coaster enthusiasts, most will probably consider this 2 credits. Because they are 2 separate coasters. Yeah. I personally don't, and that's probably a hot take for coaster enthusiasts. They're gonna disown you. I know, like for coasters that are significantly different on each side, I might do that, but these are pretty dang close on either side. There's just very, it's like on this one you turn left and this one you turn right, stuff like that. Where like a Stardust Racers has like completely different elements on each side. So I don't know. We'll see. Here's the park's description of the ride. The race is on between Thunder and Lightning. Experience the first wooden racing dueling coaster in the United States, Lightning Racer. This double-track wooden roller coaster features 2 staggered lifts and a thrilling element of competition.
It's a short description.
It's very... Compared to all the Cedar Fair, Six Flags ones that we've been doing.
That's it.
The Cedar Fair and Six Flags ones we've been doing are like 3 paragraphs. Yes, and this was 3 sentences. Very different marketing styles here.
So. That's funny.
Customer reviews. There wasn't a whole lot, about 400 reviews on Lightning Racer, which is more than some that we've had, but...
Wasn't there one that was like only 3 or something silly like that?
Well, that was last episode, the Backlot Stunt Coaster, King's Dominions didn't have any, so it just kind of depends, but I've also seen coasters that have thousands of them, so it just kind of depends, but... Here we have 5 stars. This is a great, fast wooden coaster. Love the way it does not just race side by side, but they intertwine with each other and pop out in different directions. Very cool ride.
I like that.
Very succinct. That was a week ago too, so quite a recent ride we're here.
Yeah, so. I like that.
Here's another 5-star. This is a critically underrated coaster at Hersheypark. Hidden behind the water park, Lightning Racer mixes the classic feel of a wooden racing coaster with the thrills of a modern wooden coaster. While it may be overshadowed by the rest of Hersheypark's coaster lineup, it is still a fun coaster. Both of those really solid reviews.
Yeah. Very descriptive.
Very descriptive,
yeah.
But not like they're still succinct and get their point across.
Yeah.
So. I should mention, average rating on Google was 4.7 out of 5, which is actually higher than I would have guessed for a 25-year-old wooden coaster. So, but there are some low reviews here, as we'll see. 1 star, we lost, trash mechanics, patch out false start glitch that lightning can use if frame perfect.
What the?
Okay,
That one makes no sense.
Now, I will say, based on other reviews I've seen, and I never actually have watched to see if this is true, but I've seen a lot of people say this. It seems like the lightning side wins a lot, like almost every time. And it does say, like, he's talking about patch out a false start glitch that lightning can use. So I think that's what he's going for here, is talking about that lightning always wins. I don't know.
I wonder if it was that's not an English review.
It could be a thing where, English isn't their first language.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is it could have been it.
It usually tells you if it's translated
really?
from another language, but so anyway. Here's 2 stars. Went on the Lightning Racer last week on a family vacation and haven't been right since. Went to the doctors and they said I have a mild concussion. I'm not surprised. I've rode many rides, upside down twists and turns, and this roller coaster does not have enough support for your head. My whole head and neck got shaken around. The ride was more painful than fun. I will say, can you get a concussion from whiplash is one thing, but I don't think you can get a concussion unless you hit your head. That's what a concussion is, right?
I think a definition of a concussion is swelling.
I guess so.
And if there is enough whiplash, I feel like you could get a concussion. I
mean, maybe. You and I have been on this ride. I don't see how it could be so bad that someone would get a concussion. Yeah. So there's other rides I've been on that I think could get a concussion on, but this one, not so much. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Is it rough? Yes. Concussion worthy? I don't know. I think he might get the mild concussion on the Wild Mouse that's right across the. That one's really rough. Or Wildcat before the conversion. Yeah. That one was way worse than Lightning Racer was. Here's 2 stars. We waited 2.5 to 3 hours for a ride. Can you imagine waiting 3 hours for Lightning Racer? That's crazy. That'd be like if it was the only ride open in the park. That's insane. Because that's enough people that it would be a 6-hour wait for another coaster.
That's crazy.
That's wild. Also talks about how the line had a confusing layout. It was 8 years ago, so maybe that makes a difference.
Maybe it was a New York coaster at that point.
Left us wait until they wanted everyone to think it was cool. It wasn't worth the wait much, and there were only so many trains that we nearly did not experience it. I don't know if these people are drunk on Hershey chocolate when they're writing these reviews. My gosh, it's so hard to understand these.
Never know.
They got one of those big craft milkshakes that are just in those giant cups with the Reese's cups falling off the side. And,
oh, jeez.
4 stars would have been 5 if both sides were running. Okay, that I can get behind. The whole point of the ride is to race, and so if it's not, that kind of takes away from the experience for sure. Here's another 4-star. Always a great coaster, but a bit bumpy / rough since it's wooden. Also, the coaster I was on started smoking, so we had to get off and they had to stop the ride. Okay,
whoa!
He brought that into the conversation so nonchalantly. It's a great coaster. It's a little bit bumpy. Also, it was on fire. What? Good gracious!
Cheese and crackers.
You should have started with that. It's crazy.
That needs to like go on like TikTok or something.
I know.
Holy cow.
That's pretty wild. 4 stars, just like all wooden coasters, ride them at the end of your stay, as this one is very rough. Cute, but I wouldn't ride it again. Why does this keep happening? And now every time I find a coaster review where someone calls it cute, I have to put it in there. That's like 4 episodes in a row to start the season. I don't understand.
We can be friends, Deanna.
All these coasters are cute.
It's cute.
4 stars. If you lose, you get kicked out of the park. I was not aware of that, so that's good to know. So, and then, can you imagine? There's like when you exit the ride, there's like an exit that goes outside the park and the exit that goes back into the park. Like, sorry, you gotta go.
You lose.
You gotta walk all the way around the outside of the park, get back to the car.
This is the walk of shame.
Yeah. And then last one here, 3 stars. Love the drops, hate the pain.
Wow.
And then a little meh face.
Meh face. Very descriptive. Nice.
Oh, there is our introduction to Lightning Racer at Hersheypark. Let's talk about the history. So let's hop into our time machine and pull down on the lap bar.
Click, click.
Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the time machine at all times. And let's go back to 1996. All right, 96. That's a good year.
Good year. It's the year that Nathan and I are born. We're a month apart, exactly.
Yeah. You know,
also, it's Nathan's birthday.
It's my birthday. When this episode comes out, it'll be 3 days till my birthday.
Yeah. Everybody say happy birthday, Nathan.
Thank you. It's so exciting. You know, it's actually funny because Wildcat at Hersheypark, which was our second episode that we did way back in season 1, before Wildcat's Revenge was even a thing. I discovered that Wildcat opened, I think, on my birthday. Like the day I was born, it opened. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. It's like, I have a little birthday coaster. And
you have a birthday friend.
I know. So it's kind of fun. And that's actually why we're in 1996 to start our story today, is we're talking about Wildcat, just briefly. So Wildcat opens in 1996 at Hersheypark. Here's a picture of Wildcat pre-RMC conversion. This is a credit that both of us have. We did get to ride this before the conversion happened. So I enjoyed it. It was very rough. It definitely needed some TLC, and Haley only did it one time, I think, because of that. Yeah, but then we had a chance to go to Hersheypark after they had announced that it was closing. I think it was before they announced RMC was coming in to do something with it, but it was after they had announced when it was closing permanently. And so everybody kind of knew what was going to happen. It just wasn't official yet. So I did get to ride it during its closing season. So it's kind of a nostalgic coaster for us nowadays. So, and like I said, it opened on my birthday, the day I was born. So that's kind of cool. But so this was the first coaster by GCI, or Great Coasters International, which was a brand new company at the time. We've talked about this before, but just as a quick refresh, GCI was co-founded by former employees of Custom Coasters International, or CCI. And I don't know the entire story of why they left, because both companies did exist at the same time. So I'm not sure if there was like a kind of a falling out that happened, or if they just wanted to do their own thing. But anyway, they wanted to do wooden coasters just like CCI was doing, but they, wanted to make them smoother and faster and more dynamic. And so Hersheypark took a risk with them, giving them their, it's always a risk to, give a new manufacturer their first
big break,
their first, their first coaster ever. That could either be huge for you, or it could be an absolute nightmare. Like, you just never really know. So, but Hersheypark took a risk, and they got Wildcat, and the layout featured twisted drops and rapid changes in direction, kind of blended classic wooden coaster with new modern aggressive elements. And it was a big deal and kind of propelled GCI into the amusement industry. And there's, still a big player in the industry today as a result of this coaster. So it was a big deal. Now, over the next few years, GCI would construct additional wooden coasters at some other parks. So they did Roar at Six Flags America, which we've talked about now several times in the past few episodes. I don't know why that coaster keeps coming up, but it's like ever since we talked about Six Flags America closing, we keep talking about Roar at Six Flags America. So, but they also did Roar at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, which has since been RMC converted into the Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. And then they did Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay, which was a dueling wooden coaster that has since been converted into Iron Gwazi by RMC. So during this time, Hersheypark was continuing to expand very quickly. Like, this kind of been a Hersheypark thing ever since the 90s, is they're just building coasters constantly.
Right. Yeah.
So after Wildcats opening in 96, park officials immediately began work on what would eventually become 1998's inverted coaster, Great Bear, which is still at the park to this day. It's also a very good one. And then May of 1999, they began work on their next coaster. Now, GCI had been sketching out an idea for a racing coaster, which dueling and racing coasters had kind of seen a resurgence in popularity ever since the Racer opened at Kings Island in 1972. Now, to give a quick just definition, because we're going to be talking about this, there is a difference between dueling coasters and racing coasters. I don't know if you know what the difference is. I mean, racing coaster is pretty straightforward, right? You're like side by side, and there's like a finish line at the end, and you're racing the other train. So dueling coaster is slightly different from that, though.
Okay. Tell me.
I didn't know if you wanted to guess or you just want me to say. So dueling coasters, so Gwazi here is actually a really good example of this, where it is two coasters that are built together, and they you ride them like both trains take off simultaneously, but there's not really like a point that they're racing to. They kind of just like cross paths with each other and maybe like fly by each other. So they're not really racing to a certain point, but they do interact with each other as you're going throughout the layout.
Like a bowl of spaghetti.
Yeah, so and there's not really like side by side elements. Like as you look at this, like the lift hills actually go in opposite directions when you leave the station. So this is a dueling coaster, Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa here. So, but like as you come down the first drop here of each ride, like you pass by each other, coming down the first drop, and you pass by each other, several other times throughout the ride. So, whereas racing coasters are much more common, I would say, and they're typical. Your Racer at Kennywood, the Racer at Kings Island, Thunder Road at Carowinds. There was a bunch of them that opened in the 70s and 80s. Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain, Rolling Thunder at Six Flags Great Adventure, et cetera, et cetera. There's a bunch of them. So Cedar Point also opened a steel racing coaster in 1978. That's Gemini, which is still operating at the park to this day. We've done an episode on Gemini if you want to learn more about that one. That was the first steel racing coaster, if I can remember correctly. I'd have to double check that, but I feel like that's the case. Maybe there's a really old one that I'm not thinking about, but yeah. So
how dare you forget about older ones?
I know I can't. I'm not
the roller coaster encyclopedia.
Nope, I'm not a walking roller coaster encyclopedia. Though it does seem like it to Haley sometimes. I'm sure.
Most times. What are you talking about?
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but I'm gonna pretend that it is.
It can be. You can take it without whatever way you want.
Depends in what context it comes up. So the novelty must have worn off on these, though, because new racing coasters pretty much dropped off after American Eagle opened in 1981 at Six Flags Great America. So CCI would open their first racing coaster in 1997. That is, would be Stampeda at Portaventura Park in Spain. So that was the first racing wooden coaster to open in 12 years up to that point. So
that's crazy.
And it's likely what inspired GCI to design their own racing coaster. Well, they started with a dueling coaster with Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa, and then they decided, hey, why don't we do a racing coaster as well? So happy with the success of Wildcat, Hersheypark agreed to have GCI build this new concept. And they would break ground on it in July of 1999. And then in August of 1999, Hersheypark would officially announce Lightning Racer, which was designed to be the world's first dueling and racing coaster. And essentially what that means is there's parts of the ride where you're racing side by side, and then there's other parts where you kind of split off and duel against each other. Yes.
And stuff, yeah.
So that was the whole idea, is like, hey, we can do both of those things. Like it can be, it can race at some times, and then at the end of the ride there will be a finish line to see who wins.
Right.
But then there's other times where it'll split off and do kind of different things, and cross paths with each other, or do flybys or different things. So that was kind of the whole idea, was to do both. And so you can even see this advertisement from 99, the only wooden racing dueling coaster in the country. So
they even used it to their advantage.
They sure did.
Which is funny, because not a lot of people will understand that.
Yeah, it is kind of it's a very specific thing. Like, calling it a racing coaster, I think people understand, there's going to be another train. But
dueling,
to say it's the first
dueling?
Racing and dueling,
people aren't going to get that.
Enthusiasts will be like, oh, cool. But GP is like, okay, racing, I guess. I don't know.
I guess that's cool. Yeah.
So now, shortly after Lightning Racer opened, it was actually featured in a Discovery Channel special called Making of a Coaster. It was a 45-minute documentary that did a deep dive into the development of two really big coasters that opened that year, which was a Steel Dragon 2000 and, of course, Lightning Racer.
Have you watched the full thing?
I watched the entire Lightning Racer section. I didn't watch the full 45 minutes, but I watched essentially half of it. I watched the Lightning Racer, half of it, for the episode today. So that means we have a very in-depth look from beginning to end of the development and construction of the coaster.
Okay. I
will say it is a very blurry YouTube video that was digitally formatted from a VHS recording. So take that with a grain of salt. But you can find it on YouTube if you want to go watch it yourself. And obviously you can still hear it fine, but it is very blurry. Like, there's parts I'm like, what does that say? It's very, and for that reason, I didn't even take.
Need your glasses.
I didn't even take the images from it to put into the slideshow for you to watch, but I will throw it up just with the sound off, just so that you can kind of watch it as we talk about here. See, look how blurry that is. And I was like, man, Discovery's got to have this on some streaming service, right? No, I couldn't find it anywhere.
You need to get the VHS tape out.
What is that gonna do? I just ask this person to send me their VHS recording so I can watch it on. I don't know what.
We don't even have a VHS.
No, we don't. So
who does anymore?
Yeah. So I just thought I'd kind of walk through everything that the documentary talks about. I'm not going to read verbatim what the documentary says, obviously, but just some highlights that I thought were kind of cool, and just kind of opened the doors a little bit to kind of see behind the scenes. I mean, here he's looking at the blueprints. Here's an actual he's looking at the blueprints here, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so Mike Boodley, which was one of the founders of GCI and was the lead designer on the project. So this is, you have to keep in mind, this is 1999, 2000. So this is early computers, right?
Computers are freaking massive.
Yes. And so and people had desktop computers, but they couldn't do what they do nowadays. So this is the very early stages. It was 90s is when roller coasters started to be designed by computers. So crazy. This is pretty early on in the design of, coasters being designed by computer. And the way that it was done, I don't know if it's still done nowadays this way. I can't imagine it is. But you can see here, he's using a spreadsheet to calculate each and every individual, point of the ride.
That's
to
crazy.
Calculate the the forces that are going on, and then the forces determine like here's where we need to put support structures.
Is that
and
what
here's
you're
where
gonna start doing now? Is
I like making spreadsheets, but I look at this and I'm like,
that's a whole new level.
Oh
spreadsheet
my
level.
gosh! I think I don't remember. I don't actually have it in the script here, but it was like tens of thousands of lines of data, like insane. It's
you don't
crazy.
Want to do that?
No.
Come on.
It's doing it by hand too, like that, like typing this out. That's crazy.
That's nuts.
So, but anyway, so his calculations determine the banking and the curvature, the support placement, the forces, and then all those are fed into a program that then turns them into a visual CAD drawing of the coaster's layout. So then they send that over to structural engineers that then use the CAD drawings to calculate. So there you go. There's a CAD drawing of that from the spreadsheets here. And then the wind loads are generated, and the structural integrity gives basically helps them turn, okay, how do we turn this design into an actual construction plan so that this is structurally sound when we go to build it. And so while all that is happening, GCI is working with the structural engineers to get all the construction stuff ready to go. Hersheypark's officials are working on a name for the coaster. And they actually showed a little snippet in here of like some of the names that they were thinking about, and then they show a whiteboard that has other names written on it. So I was able to pull some of that to see some of the other names that they were discussing. So here's some of the other names that were being considered. Fast Track. That is that's such a boring name.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
Duel Racer. I hate that too. Double Dare.
Okay.
It's okay.
Better.
Millennium Flyer. That one's okay. It's also
it's way too similar to some other ones.
Millennium Flyer is the name of GCI's trains that they use. Like that's the name of the trains, and so that's where they got that idea from. And then this one is might be one of the craziest coaster names I've ever heard. But one of the names they were discussing, it was a Y2 coaster. Now, I don't know if you know what that's in reference to.
Y2?
Y2 coaster. I'm guessing not. So, do you know what Y2K is? Does that sound familiar?
A little bit. It's such a new thing that people use.
It's not a new thing. It was a 2000 thing that happened.
Okay.
So Y2K, people basically, when things were crossing over, and obviously I was a toddler when this happened, so I don't remember it, and I might be getting some details wrong. But when we were crossing over from 1999 into 2000,
people freaked. They were like, the computers.
Okay, so you do know what that was called. Y2K is what people were calling that. Yeah. And so they had the idea,
but I knew that's what
the idea to call the coaster that was going to be built. It was worked on pre-2000 and built post-2000. They were going to call it Y2 Coaster, which is just it's such a ridiculous name.
So corny. That's pretty corny. That's pretty bad.
So funny to me. So there you go. Here's the board meeting of them writing down the names on the whiteboard here. It was so hard to pick out these names, but you can see it right here on the whiteboard when it shows it. Hold on, right here. Y2 Coaster right there on the bottom. It's so funny. It's quite an interesting name. So then here's the announcement. We've already talked about that, obviously, but this is the announcement ceremony. So isn't that great? 1999, man. So then the construction process starts, and they obviously have to start by surveying the land to assess the elevation, and they have to adjust the designs for that because, like, nowadays you can go and you can assess the land and then plug that into your coaster design system, and it'll, calculate everything based on, the land that you're working with and the elevation changes. My guess is they designed the coaster for a flat piece of ground, and then they take that design and they have to adjust it based on the plot of land that they ended up putting it at Hersheypark. So they have to, make adjustments based on elevation changes and all that. And they probably also tried to flatten the terrain as much as possible to make that easier. Yeah. So then they have to dig trenches 4 feet deep, and they fill that with rebar and concrete, and then that then comes up. The footers actually come up from that. So that the whole support structure of the coaster is actually all connected underground. You see that. You just see the footers that come up out of the dirt, but under that, it's all connected by rebar and cement down below. So her concrete.
I like that. It's that sound.
Yeah. So the foundation included 4,000 pedestals and footers, and the structure includes over 1,000 bents, which is the vertical pieces on the wooden frame.
That's crazy.
So the foundation and the bents together make Lightning Racer capable of withstanding over 100 mile per hour wind gusts, which is obviously important. So there was torrential rain during the construction process, which actually forced the crews to redig and reset some of the trenches. So that sounds horrible. So some more construction stats. 4 million pounds of lumber, 1 million bolts and nuts were used in the structure. Each of the trains have 12 cars, so each train has 54 wheels in total.
Holy cow.
Which is, crazy. There they are working on the wheels right there. The car bodies were made from steel and aluminum. I guess I was seeing in this that they actually use steel and aluminum because they like the way it looks better, because most companies use fiberglass, and maybe they might use fiberglass nowadays too, but at least in this for this coaster, they were using steel and aluminum, and then the running boards were still made from wood. So they just were trying to make it look as classic as possible, I think, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The upholstery is hand-rolled vinyl and foam. Each train took 7 months to manufacture, plus 1 month for assembly.
Wow.
Which is crazy. I mean, you think about it. I mean, you're essentially
and
making...
this is such a different time, too. That it's
yeah. So
they didn't have the machinery to do it either.
When you think about it, like, each car of the train is like the size of a couch, and like you have to make 12 of those just to make one train, let alone assembling all the intricate pieces and the wheels and all that. So
Right.
The trains weigh 12,500 pounds each, which is crazy.
Picking that up by yourself.
Yeah.
You want to bench that?
12,500 pounds. So once the construction was completed, trains were installed on the track and testing began. So this one's not super tall. I feel like you could do a track walk on Lightning Racer. It's not even 100 feet tall. So this part he's on right here is only like 30 feet off the ground. So
it still would make me nervous, but.
They then had another company come in called GMH Engineering, which conducted dynamic testing with sensor equipped with, this was funny, it's a test dummy that has sensors on it specifically for this kind of thing. It's like, got it in the neck and on the head and, every part of the body. They actually have named the test dummy Fred. I don't know why, but that was the test dummy's name, and they multiple times throughout here they just referred to it as Fred. They didn't say the test dummy. They were just like
train 3.
Yep, we got Fred on train 3, and this is it's just in casual conversation talking about.
That would so be something.
Let's see, Fred recorded 3.5 G forces through that. Like, it's just like it's so funny.
It's awesome.
So. Testing including running empty trains, sandbag-filled trains, and then full-weight simulations, just kind of trying everything, make sure, because you want to be familiar with, what kind of speed is it going to take to make this valley somewhere, because obviously you don't ever want that to happen, and so you need to do that type of testing to say, okay, well, we can't let the train run without this much weight on it, things like that, so... Special attention was given to flyby sections to ensure that the timing created maximum thrill without compromising safety. And then this was really funny. This was the end of the section, of the documentary here. The final test that they did before, saying like, okay, everything is good, is the GCI co-founders Mike Boodley and Claire Hain Jr. each rode one side of the coaster to compete in the coaster's very first race. Now,
the inauguration race.
Yes, so
cool.
Now I've actually met Claire Hain, because he was at the Zambezi Zinger opening when I was there a few years ago. So I got to meet him. So that's
cool.
That's kind of cool. I haven't met Mike Boodley because he wasn't there for that, but I did get to meet Claire Hain, which is cool. But so this is 25 years ago. So this is very different Claire Hain than I met a few years ago. But
I would imagine so.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I was like, oh hey, I know that guy. Like. So, there's Fred. There you go. It's pretty funny. So
I should have put a shirt with a name tag on him.
It does have a shirt on it. What is it's got a Lightning Racer shirt on it. That's awesome. I love that.
Yay, Fred!
That's not even necessary to get the readings on it. So they just did that for fun. That's amazing.
Again, also something I would totally do.
Yeah. So
I think these people could be friends with me.
Yeah.
I would so be friends with them.
So, with Fred or with
both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Fred could be my friend.
So this is Claire, and then this is Mike. So that's the two co-founders of the company. So they're doing this very first race together, right? Mm-hmm. So both of them knew this race was coming up, and they both knew that really the driving factor in who wins the race is which train is the heaviest. That's really all it is. It's like, whichever train has the most weight on it is probably going to be the train that wins. And so both of them knowing that, were trying to gain a few extra pounds leading up to the race.
Did they go and eat tons of chocolate?
No, that actually would have made a lot of sense if they mentioned that. But actually, Boodley said, so during the video when they're climbing the lift hill, he says that they'd been eating lots of junk food and burgers in the weeks leading up to the race. Ew. And apparently they both got McDonald's the night before the race. And I think Claire said that Boodley ordered 10 Big Macs or something stupid like that.
Gross.
Yeah, so... where's here? I'll show the end of the race here. So, that's them going up the lift hill. There you go. So they're just going through just one of them each on each train. So it's pretty funny, and you can tell pretty quickly through the video that Mike ends up winning pretty handily. And he says at the very end that Claire was over construction and Mike was over design. That's kind of how they did things early on. Mm-hmm. And so Mike jokes that Claire needs to get a desk job so he puts on more weight like Mike does. So, and then that's the end of the Lightning Racer section. So there you go. There's a little snippet from the documentary. You can obviously go watch it yourself if you want to. It's just called The Making of Lightning Racer. If you search that on YouTube, you'll find it pretty quickly. So that leads us to the opening of Lightning Racer. So here's I don't know if these are opening day, but I do know these pictures are at least from opening year, so to speak. So this is pretty early on in the coaster's life cycle. So Lightning Racer would...
say it.
I was cute.
It's so
very,
cute.
Very cute. So
it's so cute. Look
it's
at the
weird.
Station.
Well, it's weird looking at this picture right here because this path doesn't exist anymore. Huh. There's water park there now.
Right.
There's a huge fence that lines all through here, and it actually makes it really hard to get pictures of this section of the coaster.
Right.
And this is all water park now. So this is, pre them adding the water park to Hersheypark. So it's very, very different. Mm-hmm. So
I love the station. I think the station's really
the station is really cool. So
it's cute.
It's very cute. So Lightning Racer would officially open to the public on May 13th, 2000 and continues to operate to this day. The ride experience is as follows. The trains exit their respective stations and go through a small turnaround before engaging the lift hills. The lift hills are not side by side, but slightly offset from each other to help them race once in the actual layout. Thunder is on the right and Lightning is on the left. Once cresting the lift, the trains drop 90 feet to the right, hitting the top speed of 51 miles per hour. The trains turn left as they ascend over a large camelback hill and then drop back to the right. The track then splits off in opposite directions as the trains ascend, and then they dive back towards each other as the trains enter a 128-foot long tunnel, only 6 feet apart. This tunnel also features the on-ride photo. At this point, lightning is now on the left and thunder is on the right. It's also the position that they will finish in as well. The trains continue to race side by side through several small turns and hills before splitting again, and the trains pass by each other in a head-on flyby. The first true dueling moment of the attraction. The tracks meet back up, but the tracks are now crossing over and under one another. Lightning crosses underneath thunder, then thunder underneath lightning, before turning, one turns left, one turns right, into another head-on flyby. After exiting the flyby, the trains meet back up side by side for the final stretch as they fly over a small double up and cross the finish line before hitting the final brakes. So, quite a lot there. That's if you were able to picture that in your head,
I'm
kudos
such a
to
visual person that it's hard for me.
I know.
Yeah.
The only reason I do it is just for people that haven't been on the ride, and also might be listening in their car and can't look up. It at least gives you a general idea of the ride experience for people.
That's a good idea. That's what I need to see.
Exactly. So
this is me.
This is actually really cool. It's not very often you can find pictures like this of a drone taking an overhead view.
I like it.
But this is really cool. You can see very clearly. So this is racing section, comes back together, racing, and then this is where splits off and they pass each other. And then this one crosses over this one, and then under the other one. They cross, fly by each other again and then meet back up. And the finish line is right there, I think. So it's pretty cool. The other thing I have, one other thing I'll call out here before we move on is I've heard that there used to be a waterfall that would come down at the beginning of the tunnel. And then right before you pass through, it would stop. So it gave you the illusion that you would crash into it and that you didn't. Huh. I don't know if that's true because I never saw Hersheypark mention that, but I heard other people say they need to bring the waterfall effect back. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So definitely doesn't do that nowadays.
If it malfunctioned and you got drenched, that
would be interesting. So this is obviously a later picture because you can see the water park here. Right? So. But, pretty cool. Mm-hmm. You want to see an old-timey commercial?
Of course.
It's been so long since we've done one of these. These are so good. This one, this is very 90s. Okay,
yes.
Ready?
Yes.
Throughout history, man has invented various ways to race. But a brand new century is here. And with it, a new way to compete. Introducing the all-new Lightning Racer, the only wooden racing and dueling roller coaster in the country. 2 tracks, 2 trains, 1 winner. The race is on. The new Lightning Racer, only at Hersheypark.
So cheesy.
Throughout time, man has come out with all kinds of ways to race. It's oh gosh.
Who wrote your script, my friend?
It's very cheesy. Here's an article from Media Day. So I think Media Day looks like it was May 11th, so a couple days beforehand. That makes sense. That's usually how it works. Mm-hmm. So we've got not a lot of time left, so I'm not going to read through this whole article, obviously. The only things they really call out here, it does talk about the racing and dueling aspect. It even calls out the racer at Kennywood being a racing coaster, but there's no points where you're actually heading towards the other train. And,
right.
Calling out that difference. So it does mention in here that Haynes says both trains have an equal chance to win. It just depends on who's riding them. He says if the riders weigh more and their clothes are less wind resistant, that train will probably win.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about the... I don't feel like wind resistance is...
That's full of baloney. Go make yourself a bologna sandwich with that one.
I read that and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Ridiculous.
I'm sure it has a small impact. Maybe a few inches over the course of the whole ride.
That.
But weight is 95% of the driving factor, I'm sure.
Big old person on that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Also,
Wind resistant.
yeah, wind
Whatever.
resistance. Okay. Other determining factors include the temperature and the lubrication on the track, but that's like, no, you can't control that. So, whatever. So, another thing that talks about here is the topographical map that Hersheypark gave to GCI was different from the actual layout of the park. I don't know how that happened.
How does that happen?
So GCI got there and was like, there's a fence here that we didn't know was going to be here. and a restaurant. There was like a restaurant in the way. They're like, this is not. So they had to fix that, obviously. So then it talks about some high schoolers that got to come for an assignment to come ride the coaster and got out of school that day. I'm like, wow.
Oh, man, that's like your kind of day off.
Yeah, how about that? So that is the opening of Lightning Racer. So Mike Boodley, I guess this is one more thing from the documentary. He said that whenever they finish a coaster, it's kind of a bittersweet moment because it's like, great, we got this coaster finished, but now it's like, now you just kind of walk away and you don't ever see the coaster again unless you're visiting the park for fun or maintenance or something like that.
Yeah.
He likened it to like sending a kid off to college. Like you like are like, okay, we finished this project. Now
go live your life.
Hand you over to Hersheypark now and they'll take care of you, you know? So it's kind of funny.
I could see that.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy.
So initial response for the ride was incredibly positive. Like GCI was very, and still is today, but especially early on, like it was very different from the wooden coasters that were, opening in the 70s and 80s and, obviously way earlier than that too. It was just a very, very different type of experience, and coaster enthusiasts were crazy for it and still are, obviously. But,
right.
Now we've had it for almost 30 years. It's less, the novelty is worn off, but it's still very good.
Yeah.
So Lightning Racer was the first project that really allowed GCI to see like, okay, we can do something like really big. Gwazi was pretty big too, that they opened in 1999. Mm-hmm. So both of those together were like, wow, like GCI can do like huge projects. So many in the industry felt like it outshined older racing coasters and other things that CCI had done. It would rank as the number 13 wooden coaster in the world in the Golden Ticket Awards. So not like top tier, there were other wooden coasters people felt were better.
Right.
But to this day, it is still in the top 25 in the Golden Ticket Awards, which is quite different from the CoasterBot ranking. So there's definitely some split opinions on Lightning Racer nowadays. I think it's really just how rough it's gotten. And like, there's really no other dueling and racing wooden. In fact, I don't think there is another dueling and racing wooden coaster in the country. So it's really a one-of-a-kind experience, which, lends itself to, having a unique attraction definitely gives it a boost in how people, enjoy the attraction and their, perception of it. But it's still really rough. It could use some TLC for sure.
Yeah. There's
some other GCI coasters that, besides RMC conversions, because that's a totally different thing. But there's other GCI coasters that have gotten their Titan track. And I don't know, I feel like Lightning Racer could benefit from, getting a Titan track overhaul. So
what's the Titan track?
That's their steel track that they do.
Yeah.
So and it's not like adding inversions or anything. It's just literally just retracking it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
So this really kind of re-sparked racing and dueling coasters between Gwazi and Lightning Racer here. It ended up, culminates in future rides like Twisted Colossus, which is RMC's take on a dueling and racing coaster. West Coast Racers, which is another, steel coaster that also duels and races. And then obviously, like we said, opening the day this episode comes out is Stardust Racers at Universal Studios, which is another dueling and racing steel coaster. So they are, still making them nowadays. Yeah. Now, obviously in steel form rather than the wooden form that Lightning Racer was 25 years ago, but still interesting. So,
that's cool.
Yeah. Now, for years, Wildcat operated in Lightning Racer's shadow, as most people considered it inferior to Lightning Racer. I did always think it was kind of weird that they had two GCI coasters, not just that opened within a few years of each other, but they are also really close to each other in the park. Like, they're like 2-minute walk from each other.
Yeah.
So after RMC became a big player in the amusement industry, it was a debate amongst coaster enthusiasts whether Wildcat or Lightning Racer should get the RMC treatment. I think I even said in our Wildcat episode that we did years ago that I would prefer if Wildcat got completely retracked and Lightning Racer was the one that got RMC'd. Just because I was like, how cool would could RMC do something with Lightning Racer?
I still think RMC should do something. I think it'd be awesome.
I don't think they will now that they've RMC'd Wildcat.
You never know, though.
Nowadays, I would just keep it the way it is, obviously, but I would retract Lightning Racer so it's smoother. But ultimately, Hersheypark did decide to give Wildcat the RMC conversion and leave Lightning Racer as is. Wildcat's Revenge would open in 2023. And then that brings us to today. So the reason we're talking about Lightning Racer for this season is because just, we opened May 13th, so this episode comes out on the 22nd. So 9 days ago, Lightning Racer celebrated its 25th birthday.
Yay!
And
happy birthday.
The park made a post about it and everything, which I appreciate when the parks actually recognize that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they were selling these little pieces of it's coaster track, but they painted them green and red for the two different sides.
I love that.
And then they're only selling it at the park, and it looks like they were selling 120 of them. So yeah. Oh no, I misread it. It's from the car. That's why it's green and red, because it comes from the actual train.
That's cool.
There
I
you
like
go.
that.
So yeah. So that
I don't know how
makes
much those cost, man.
I saw it, but I don't have it here. It was probably upwards of $100 if I had to guess. So
makes sense.
Yeah. So, but pretty cool. So yeah, the park's celebrating the 25th anniversary. So, for the anniversary, they gave a little bit of information, like a little behind the scenes look on the maintenance of the trains, which is kind of cool. And again, getting a little bit of look behind the scenes here. I won't go into everything, but I did learn they completely disassemble the train every year. Like everything, completely disassemble so that they can check everything, check every wheel, every bolt, and
wild.
Repaint the wood, just make sure everything looks good. The park actually rotates the cars every year too. So the lead car one year will get moved to the back the next year, and they rotate the cars. So
That's
each
smart.
car is, getting, wear and tear in different parts, but depending on where it is in the train.
That's smart. I
Now,
like that.
though the cars rotate, each car has its own specific parts. So the wheels are always stay with that car until it's too worn down to repair, and they replace it with a new wheel or whatever. So they number every part as it's coming off the train. They number it and meticulously make this one goes with this car, and everything. Such a meticulous process.
Got it wrong.
So,
hey Bill, what one does this one go to?
I mean, they have to, right? It's like when mechanics pull apart an engine. It's the same thing. You got to make sure you have every part and you know exactly where it goes.
So don't give this job to me, is what you're saying.
Don't give it to me either.
Got it.
So over the 25 years the coaster's been opened, they've updated a few things, such as the reprofiling of the lap bars. They updated the foam padding to make it even more comfortable. Kudos to that.
Cushiony.
And then they actually completely upgraded the ride's operating system too.
Okay.
Probably just a new computer system for the operation, which is really nice when that happens. From what I hear from people that actually do ride operations, it's like moving from Windows XP to Windows 10, and you're like, oh my gosh, hallelujah.
Yeah.
It's
wonderful.
But that is the history of Lightning Racer at Hersheypark. Now, before we close, our Lightning Racer story that we've been teasing for so long.
So good. You start.
I'll start?
Yeah.
So this is our first visit ever to Hersheypark. First day, second day? I can't remember if it was first day or second day. Anyway, we were there 2 days, but it was our first visit ever. And so we get in line for Lightning Racer. We're getting all of our credits checked off. So this is our first time getting on Lightning Racer.
And Ben was with us. But no, he didn't get on this one, I don't think.
I think
Did he?
I can't remember now.
No, I can't remember.
I can't remember now either. I know you and I were for sure.
Yeah.
I can't remember if your dad and your brother were with us or
Probably
not.
Dad, but I can't remember if Ben did it or not.
Anyway, so Haley and I get to the front of the line, and we're at the gates waiting to get on. And they do this like thing. You've probably had this happen at parks where they tell you they're going to open the gate, but don't get on the ride because they're bringing in someone through the exit. And you're like, okay, they're bringing in someone with a disability or something, or, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and they bring in this family of it was probably like 5 or 6 people, somewhere in there.
Yeah, something like that.
And we're sitting there, or really, I'm sitting there, because I think I'm the one that noticed.
It was like you, and then a couple of
it was like me, and then there was like 2 girls that were in the row in front of us that also had to wait to get on, and so they were kind of noticing too.
They were next to us, I think, not in front of us. Anyways.
And so, well, that's what I mean, like the row in front of us, yes. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, that guy looks really familiar. And it suddenly dawns on me that this might not be a handicapped person, but it might be a VIP. And that's why and so as the train's leaving, it finally clicks, and the people next to me,
no, because so he gets on, but then the ride operator's like, buddy, you gotta take off your hat and sunglasses.
That's right. He had a hat and sunglasses on to kind of not shield his identity. Well, that's not the right word, but
he just,
to be more incognito,
yeah.
So that he didn't have people crowding him the whole time.
Right.
And so, but obviously he has to take him off to get on the ride. And when he does that, I think that's when all of us were like, oh, and,
yeah.
And it was Kevin James was the one that got on the ride. And so, not like an A-list celebrity, he's kind of, not as popular nowadays as
it's not like Taylor Swift, but like it was still a big deal.
It was still a big deal, and like we recognized him, the people next to us recognized him, and like I feel like especially our age know him more than like Gen Zers,
right.
Because we watched like Mall Cop and stuff like that growing up, and so obviously we knew who he was. So there's 2 trains on the ride, so we get on the next train before they get off the ride, because they're doing it that way. So so we're kind of like, well, that was cool. We saw Kevin James, so saw him at Hersheypark getting on Lightning Racer or whatever. And so that was what we thought was the last of it. And then after we get off the ride, I'll let you take over this part, because this was more your side of the story. Because I kind of went off to take pictures of Wildcat while this was happening. So
we get off the ride, and then I see Kevin James and his family like taking pictures in like this like open area.
Were they taking pictures with fans? Is that
no? It was just like with their family, and like they were like just taking pictures. I think next to a sign that like said Hersheypark or something like that. And anyway, so they were taking pictures, and no one was around them. No one was talking to them or anything, but they had like some security guards with them,
Yep.
But again, like, he had his hat on, he had his sunglasses back on, but like, obviously now that you and I knew who he was. And so I was like, I'm gonna go like just ask the security guard if I can like ask if I can take a picture with him, because I didn't want to interrupt their day. I didn't want to like, be that person or whatever.
Exactly.
But like, because like, they're enjoying their family, they're enjoying like, and anyways,
the whole reason they have the security detail is because so they can be left alone.
Right.
And that's why he's wearing the ball cap and the sunglasses, because he doesn't want to get mauled by people.
Right. So like I just went up and very nicely asked the security guard. I said, "Is it okay that I ask him if I can get a picture with him?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can go ask him. Like, I don't know if he will or not, but you're more than happy to go ask him." And I did, and like, he was super, super nice. Like, he's just like, "Yeah, we can take a quick picture," but he didn't take his sunglasses off or his hat off, but like, so, anyways, but he was super nice, and I actually got to talking to, apparently it was his brother, And his brother was like super, super nice too. We had like an actual like real conversation. And anyways,
it's funny. I think
like,
it was around that time that he was doing that NASCAR Netflix show. You remember that show?
Yeah.
That we watched. It got canceled after one season because I don't know, people don't care about NASCAR anymore. But we had been watching that show prior to this, so we're like, oh hey, like, it was pretty funny that we were watching a Kevin James show when this happened.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Anyways, he was super nice. Like, and his
you
family was super nice. I did get a picture with
him,
so maybe you can take that picture and post it and be like,
yeah, there you go. So now that we've finally told the story,
Kevin James story.
Yep. So
that's my.
I did technically run into him one other time that didn't. Well, kind of. When I was in line for Fahrenheit later in the day. His family got on, but he did not. So I don't know if he's much of a coaster person. He's not,
because remember, a couple days later or months or whatever, I was on Instagram and I started chuckling because he had posted a picture of him at Disney World with his family, and he was the official bag holder.
Oh, that's right.
So he's not a coaster person.
So Lightning Racer's probably like kind of top of his. Yeah, he's like, I'm not getting on anything bigger than this.
He went on because he took his son with him. Like, he went on with his son.
Yeah, he was. I think he was sitting next to his son.
His son was probably like, I want to say like 12. 10,
somewhere in there.
12 or under, something like that. So, but anyways, so yeah, there you go.
There you go. There's our
little
Lightning Racer
famous person
celebrity
story.
run-in. So
it was cool. Fun, it was cool.
I don't think we've run into any other famous people at the park. So other than like coaster enthusiasts, like influencer
definitely not
people,
his level.
No, not like movie people.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think I've ever met someone as famous as him before.
I've met a couple others, but
that was intentional.
Yes,
you've never like run into somebody like that.
No,
like,
no.
Yeah, like we've met people that are like. But we've intentionally, like, we've gone to Comic-Con and, like, things like that, but, like, we never...
Yes, that is true. That's fair.
Yeah. So...
Well, there you have it. If you stuck around for the whole episode, now you have finally heard the Lightning Racer story that we've been teasing for years, and you're probably going, wow,
that was the dumbest story ever.
I waited 3 years for a Kevin James story. No.
Watch Kevin James listen to this and be like, hey.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure Kevin James is out there listening to Roller Coaster History Podcast.
We should tag him in it. Be like, Kevin James, we mentioned you.
So, well, that is our episode for today. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. I think we're going to one of the Busch Gardens parks for our next episode. Nice. So that'll be fun. So that'll be a good time. It'll be nice to continue to try not stay away from the Cedar Fair parks, but I'm sure people want to hear stuff other than Cedar Fair for once. So got to do a couple episodes in a row here.
We do plan on doing more Six Flags in the future, just so everybody's aware.
We are tentatively planning a trip to a Six Flags park right now.
Yeah,
so
very tentative. Like, it's not set.
It's not set in stone, but we're trying to make it happen. Yeah, so we'll let you know if that becomes official. So
yeah.
Yeah, if you want to follow us on our socials, we're on Instagram and Twitter/X. Our handle is @airtimetraveler on both of those. If you like this episode, please sure to give us a 5-star rating. It's not for our egos. It's just to help people continue to find the podcast in the future. I think that's all I've got. Anything from the GP? So shout out to Kevin James. Giving Lightning Racer a little bit of a spotlight for our episode today. So
thanks for being so nice and talking to me.
Yeah.
I appreciated it.
Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast, and we will see you in the next one.